Okay, listen. I spent years thinking I was a problem in social situations, okay? Which I'm not gonna hold y'all, I kinda was. But not in the way I thought. Not in a I'm a socially awkward weirdo loser who will never be able to hold a single conversation ever in my life and will spend the rest of my life recluse in a decrepit, dirty little cave where I will never see anybody ever again. Not that dramatic, alright? Not even really dramatic at all. It wasn't that something was intrinsically wrong with me or that I was unworthy. It was more like, oh, you just don't understand the intricacies of social dynamics yet. That's it. That was the whole simplest, most simple issue, really. Because for the longest time, every awkward interaction, every weird silence, every time I left the conversation or room, and immediately started replaying it in my head, it felt like a literal crime scene, alright? And I always landed on the same conclusion. Yup, it's me. I'm the weirdo. I thought I was socially awkward, but looking back now, the real issue wasn't me being bad with people. It was more like one, me completely misreading everyone, and two, just not knowing how to properly communicate with people. And I will unfortunately just always take those misgivings personally without even realizing it. Like I would turn every little doubt in my head into proof that something was actually wrong with me. And the funny part is, I'm not even that type of person at the first pick. Like I'm not the someone who needs people like that. Like I actually genuinely enjoy being alone 99% of the time. But even then, you can't really opt out of social interactions. Like life doesn't work like that, unfortunately. You still have to talk to people, exist in rooms, like navigate conversations, all of that without overthinking every single word like it's some kind of test you're failing. And that's exactly what Dale Carnegie breaks down in How to Win Friends and Influence People. That most of what we struggle with socially doesn't actually comes from being inherently bad with people, but from misunderstanding how people think, how they react, and how they interpret you. And the whole book is really about learning how to navigate interactions with others better in real life. So in this video, guys, I'm going to break down what I learned and practically applied from the book and how it changed the way I show up in social situations. Not in a becoming super likable and charismatic overnight way, but more like how to actually understand what's happening around you when you're with people, or how to talk without overthinking every single interaction, or how to, you know what, even feel more comfortable just existing in rooms around people. That's it. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably not the problem. You just never got taught how this whole thing actually works. Okay, before I even get into all this, I just want to clarify one thing because I know the title can make this sound way more emotionally dramatic than it actually is. Um, because when I say I assume that everyone hates me, I don't necessarily mean this in a self-pitying way. Like this isn't an insecurity thing, though I do have insecurities like everyone else. This is not an insecurity thing, alright? Like it's actually a mechanism I consciously train my brain to operate under in order to keep people at a distance and in order to, let's say, lower my inhibitions to be able to basically do just whatever I want. And considering the fact that I genuinely naturally prefer solitude like most of the time, that mindset honestly benefit me in a lot of ways. Because to be honest, I don't necessarily want people to like me. I just don't want that same mental framework to start interfering with my ability to navigate social interaction effectively, if it makes sense. Like I don't want to become socially incompetent when I'm suddenly put in rooms and I have to actually speak and interact with people, because I don't want all those voices in my head guiding me wrong. Okay, that's the whole thing. But I inherently do not mind people disliking me or the action, my action of assuming that people dislike me. Let's say I want both. Like I wanna have my cake and eat it too. Because in my humble opinion, there's a difference between being emotionally dependent on people presence and opinion and completely misreading and failing at navigating social dynamics altogether. And that's really the balance that this video is about. but you can extract from this video, if you want, how to make friends and how to build genuine connections if that's what you care about. The message is here too for that. That's literally the title of the book. It's just that since I am who I am, that's not really the lens I'm coming from. This isn't what the book and this lesson was about for me. Personally, it's more about better understanding social dynamics clearly enough that I will not be controlled by fear of misrepresentation, personally, for me. Okay, so now that we got that clarified, first thing first, before you even learn how to be sociable, like before you learn how to hold conversations better, like before you learn how to stop overthinking literally every interaction, all right, you kind of have to learn how to read people correctly first, because I genuinely think that half of what we call social awkwardness is really just incorrect interpretation. Like, trust me, I will know, because for the longest time I secretly thought that, in my very small and ignorant brain, for my defense, that every interaction I ever had was just going terribly and would always be doing so. The crazy part is, most of the time none of that was even real. It was just me projecting my own assumptions onto people. And that's actually one of the first things Dale Carnegie indirectly start breaking down in How to Win Friends and Influence People. He says, any fools can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. And at first, when I read that quote, I didn't fully grasp the full scope of it. But then I realized that the quote isn't just about criticizing people out loud. A lot of us criticize others silently too. Like, we project and assign negative intentions onto people constantly without even realizing it. Like, if someone doesn't text back fast enough, it's like, oh, they don't like me. If a random ass stranger seems tired one day, oh, they're annoyed by me. Like, if someone isn't super expressive, oh, they think I am weird. It's always about you. Meanwhile, the other person is literally just existing. Like, the amount of time I interpreted neutrality as disinterest is literally insane. And the thing is, when you already believe people just wouldn't want to talk to you or aren't interested, your brain will automatically start collecting evidence for it everywhere. Like any tiny facial expressions, the tone shifts, like the few tiny pauses. Suddenly, everything becomes proof of that. And because of that, you stop interacting naturally. And instead, you start performing. Incorrectly, Maya had. But okay, let me give y'all a real example, because this one right there was actually tragic. I remember that one time, alright? By the way, I was very young back then, so don't judge me too much. I was very naive. But the lesson was a good lesson, so I never forgot it. Anyways, I remember that one time, alright? I was talking to that girl in class, and the conversation started off very much fine. Like, okay, cool vibes. That midway through the conversation, she looked down on her phone for like 2 seconds, alright? Like literally two. And instead of behaving like a normal human being, my brain immediately went like, yeah, pack it up, she's bored. End the conversation before you embarrass yourself further. So what did I do? I started talking faster and I started over explaining myself. Like, I started trying to save the interaction, which ended up just making me seem even more weird than I was already behaving. And the whole time, the conversation only became awkward after I started panicking, alright? And it was not even a minute after I found out that she was literally just checking her phone for the time because she had another class to get to. That's it. Like, no secret hatred, no deep judgment, just literally a girl checking for the time. But I unfortunately read that one cue incorrectly, which ended up messing the whole interaction afterwards. And that's where this other quote from Dale Carnegie come into context. It goes like, try to honestly say things from the other person point of view, because I later realized that I was never doing that. I was seeing everything from my own insecure point of view. And those are two completely different realities, alright? One of them create ease and flow and connection, and the others simply creates paranoia. And honestly, learning how to slow down and correctly read small cues honestly changed the way I interacted with people. Because once I stopped assuming every little thing was about me, social situations became way less terrifying. Like, genuinely, I stopped treating conversation like performance evaluations, and I started realizing that most people are just way too busy thinking about themselves to obsess over you the way you think they are. And with that, I finally understood that being sociable isn't about becoming the loudest person in the room or magically turning into a super charismatic, super likable person overnight. It's mostly about learning how to stop misrepresenting people and to stop reacting to fears that only exist in your own head. And once you stop doing that, guys, trust me, you will naturally start showing up differently around others. Which brings me to the next part. How do social dynamics actually work? So once you start realizing that you're not inherently bad with people and you mainly just misread them, you kind of hit the next question, which is what is actually going on when people interact? And this is where I think most people get socializing completely wrong because we tend to assume that conversations are logical exchanges of informations. Like I say things, you process say things, and you respond logically. And that is not how it works at all. Dale Carnegie makes this extremely clear throughout the book, alright? Especially in the foundational idea that when dealing with people, remember that you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion. And once you actually sit with that for a second, it kind of changes everything because it means that people are not responding to your exact words most of the time. They're responding to how they feel in your presence, not what you said, and certainly not what you meant to say, but like the emotional impression they got from it. So when you're in a conversation at any given time, there are basically three layers happening at the same time. First, the surface layer that covers what words are actually being said. Second, the emotional layer, which covered how each person feels during the exchange. And third, the interpretive layer, which is basically just the real juice, alright? Like how each person feels and how each person is reading the other person intent. And most social confusion happen when those layers don't match, when they are in a line. Like you can say something neutral, but if the emotional tone feels off, the interaction will change. Or you can say something imperfect, but if the emotional tone feels warm and engaged and safe, people will barely register that mistake, which is why Carnegie keeps coming back to the idea of genuine interest in others, not performance, because people are constantly scanning for one thing only. Am I being treated in a way that makes me want to continue this interaction? And that connects directly to one of the other core ideas in how to win friends and influence people. It's that there is only one way to get anybody to do anything, and that is by making that person want to do it, basically. Like, if you really want to translate that into social dynamics, it's not being about persuasion or influence in the traditional 48 laws of power sense, which by the way I'm tempted to make a review about that next. But anyways, it stopped being about that and it becomes something much simpler. It's that people don't respond to what is correct, they respond to what is inviting, which is basically the foundation of how social dynamics work. Because like I said before, interaction is not a logical experience. It's not a logical exchange of information. It's a feedback loop. It's like you say something, the other person reacts emotionally, and you adjust what you say based on that reaction, and they do the same. And the same loop would basically happen over and over again. It's just constant micro adjustments, not scripting or not pre-rehearsing everything to be perfect, just adjustment. And this is also where most people misinterpret being good socially. They think it means saying the right things or being interesting or never being awkward, but in reality social ease comes mostly from something much more mechanical, okay? It's about how quickly you can align your intent with the other person emotional state. Like that's it. And this is why Carnegie frames work keeps emphasizing things like attention, interest, and acknowledgement, because those are the actual things that shape the emotional layer of the interaction, not just saying the perfect sentence. So once you fully comprehend that structure, social dynamics stop feeling random, and you will stop asking yourself questions like, why did that interaction go well, or why did that interaction go badly? And instead start feeling like, oh, I can actually see what shifted there, which is the entire point, okay? Because once you can see that system clearly, you will stop over personalizing it. And that's really what this part of the book is about in practice. Not how to impress people, but how to understand the mechanics of human interactions well enough that you're not guessing anymore. Which brings us to the next part, how to actually talk with people without ever thinking everything you say. So now we get to the tricky part, the part that actually has most people trapped in their head usually. Because once you start overanalyzing social situations, the next stage is usually this: you stop speaking naturally. And you start just monitoring yourself while speaking. Like you're no longer part of the conversation, but you're instead just watching yourself from the outside, alright? And Dale Carnegie actually indirectly addresses this through the quote I mentioned earlier. It goes like, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, alright? Most fools do. And what it's actually pointing at here isn't just the inherent negativity that comes with criticism that will naturally hinder any good attempt at conversation, okay? It's also this tendency that humans have to center themselves in every interaction, to assume that they're the one being evaluated and judged and scored in real time. And when you internalize that mindset, every sentence will feel high stakes, alright? Every pause will suddenly feel like failure, and every word will feel like it has to be perfect. But socially, that's not how most people experience you at all. Most of the time, they're not analyzing every single part of your sentence, they're just asking themselves one thing: do I actually enjoy being here or not? And Carnegie repeats this idea in different forms across the book, but one of the clearest version of it is this: talk to someone about themselves and they'll listen for hours, because people are not tracking your perfection, all right? They're tracking their own emotional experience in their interaction. And Carnegie reinforces this again by saying the royal road to a man's hurts is to talk to him about what he treasures the most, which isn't just poetic fluff, okay? It's a mechanism, because people open up when the conversation aligns with what they actually inherently care about internally. So when you're overthinking what to say, you're usually just focusing on the wrong target entirely. You're thinking, what is the right thing to say? When the actual social question should be, what will make this person feel more understood right now? And that shift alone literally removes like 70% of the pressure, because you're not just trying to perform correctly, you're instead orienting yourself towards the other person. Like, okay, let me show y'all what this will look like in real life. Say you're the archetype that tends to overthink literally every single sentence you say in every conversation every day. Like, you'd be mid-sentence and suddenly think, hold on, does that sound weird? Did that make sense? Like, did I say that correctly? Should I perhaps rephrase that? And the worst part is, unfortunately, most of the time you don't even notice that you're doing it at the first place, but you know for sure afterwards that that conversation felt safe. The key then to that problem, to that pattern of over editing your sentences in real time, will be that the next time, instead of trying to fix your speech, you try something a little different. You see, you stop focusing on yourself completely, okay? And you just focus on the other person. You just do that. Like next time, you go in with the intention of only listening, and instead of waiting for your turn to talk, just that, listening. And trust me, in most cases, something really interesting will happen, okay? In those instances, the conversation will usually become easier. Not because you became more articulate or you suddenly became a master charmer in a few hours, but because with that change alone, you would have stopped interrupting your own thinking. And that ties into another Carnegie principle that basically runs through the whole entire book, okay? It goes like the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. And once you understand that, you will stop trying to impress people and you will instead start making them feel seen in the moment, because that's the real key. And this is where everything kind of ties in together, okay? Because talking without overthinking is not really a speech problem, it's an attention problem usually. You're too focused on monitoring yourself instead of participating in the interaction. And the moment your attention shifts outward, even slightly, alright, the pressure will drop. Not because you suddenly became confident, but because you stop turning the conversation into a self evaluation test. And that's really the core idea here. You don't fix overthinking by trying to think better or by trying to make everything more perfect. You fix it by thinking less about yourself in the moment. Because most overthinking comes from this idea that there's a perfect sentence somewhere waiting to be found by you that you're supposed to find, which there isn't. Conversations aren't tests, okay? They are reactions. So instead of thinking, what should I say? Think instead, what am I responding to right now? The idea here, once again, being that decentering yourself from the conversation is the key. And this is where everything kind of levels up, because once you stop overthinking literally what to say, the next natural question becomes, okay, but what actually makes people enjoy talking to you in the first place? Like, yeah, you stop overthinking every word coming out of your mouth, but how do you make others enjoy those not overthought words? And Carnegie is very clear on this, okay? Even if he doesn't always say it in a flashy way, he says it's not wit and it's not your intelligence and it's not even about being super impressive. It's about making the other person feel good about themselves in your presence. That's really it. And he says it directly in one of the core ideas of the book. He says, remember that a person names is that to a person the sweetest and most important sound in any language, which sounds simple, almost too simple to matter, but socially it changes everything, because using someone's name in conversation does something very specific psychologically. It signals recognition and attention, your attention, and people don't easily forget how it feels to be seen, okay? And even before anything is said, okay, Carnegie also highlights something even more basic but extremely powerful, in my opinion and in his opinion, the idea of simply smiling. He literally emphasizes in the book that a smile is one of the most direct ways to influence the emotional tone of an interaction, because it communicates warmth and safety before logic even enters the picture. And psychologically speaking, it works because humans subconsciously mirror facial expressions. So when you smile at someone, like genuinely smile, not performative, you're not just being polite, you're setting the emotional tone of the interaction as safe and welcoming. Like you're psychologically calming the person down. And that alone changes how people respond to you. But it doesn't stop there. Carnegie also reinforces a much deeper principle underneath all of this. It says if there is any one secret to success, it lies in the ability to get the other person point of view and see things from that person angle as well as from your own. And that's the real secret right there. Because making people enjoy talking to you isn't about performing social skills. It's about consistently stepping into their internal world while speaking to them. So if we translate this into something actually usable in real life, it becomes very practical. Basically, when you're talking to someone, okay, there are a few things that will faithfully change how they experience you. Not in a manipulative way, but just human way, let's say. First, you let them talk more than you. Not because you're trying to be polite, but because people naturally warm up to people who give them space to exist fully in a conversation. Second, you actually react to what they say. not just by waiting for your turn to speak, all right, but by saying small stuff like, oh wait, that's actually crazy, like no way, what happened next, or actually what, that makes sense. Like little emotes like this, these tiny reactions matter more than perfect sentences ever will, to be honest, because they tell the other person that I'm here, I'm with you, I'm actually listening. And third, you use their name naturally, not in a forced way, but lightly here and there throughout the interaction, because once again, Carnegie idea here is simple. People don't respond to information, they respond to recognition, and their name is the fastest form of recognition. And fourth, you stop trying to be interesting and start being interested. And this is probably the biggest point, honestly, because the moment you stop mentally asking what can I say next, and instead start asking what is this person actually trying to express right now, the entire energy of the conversation will shift. And Carnegie supports this emotional principle too when he explains that action seems to follow feeling, but really both action and feelings go together, which basically means that the way someone feels during an interaction is shaped in real time, okay, not after the fact. So if you create a feeling of warmth, of attention and ease at the moment, they associate that feeling in the future with you. And that's why some people are just naturally pleasant to talk to and pleasant to be with, not because they're saying anything extraordinary, but because they regulate the emotional tone of the interaction without even trying. And outside of the book, there's also something else happening underneath all of this. Like, from a behavioral psychology perspective, because humans are wired to repeat interaction they feel are rewarding socially. So when someone feels heard and understood and validated and emotionally mirrored, their brain tags that interaction as safe and worth repeating. That's literally what social reinforcement is. Which means people don't just enjoy talking to you randomly, okay? They enjoy talking to you because the nervous system tie you with that ease. So when you put all of this together, right? Making people enjoy talking to you is not one big life skill. It's a combination of small, consistent behaviors, like remembering and using people's name, letting people express themselves freely, showing genuine interest instead of performance when they're talking, and maintaining a warm and attentive tone. Like, that's it. Just presence that makes the other person feel like they matter in the interaction. And once you understand all of that, alright, the question stops being how do I impress people? And instead it becomes how do I make this interaction feel better for them while I am in it? And that shift is exactly what set up the final layer or the final part of this video. And honestly, I think this is the part everything else was building toward this entire time. Because once you stop misreading people, once you understand how social dynamics actually work, and once you stop overthinking literally every interaction and learn how to make people feel comfortable around you, you eventually hit a deeper realization. It's that a lot of social insecurity actually comes from unconsciously placing other people above yourself. So the next question naturally becomes, how do you actually stop feeling socially inferior in every room you enter? And Carnegie indirectly addresses this constantly throughout the book. Not by telling you to become like super arrogant or dominant and whatever Sigma Alpha Red Pill bull stuff people are using nowadays, but by teaching you something much simpler. It's that most people are just human beings trying to feel important, understood, and emotionally safe just like you. And once you truly internalize that, rooms will stop feeling so intimidating because you will stop seeing other people as these all-knowing judges evaluating your every move in real time, and you will start seeing them as participants in the exact same social system that you're navigating through, basically. And honestly, one of the most important Carnegie quotes, in my opinion, for this part is probably this: you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Because that quote completely shifts your attention outward. Social inferiority usually comes from this hyper awareness of the self by asking yourself questions like, how do I look? Do I sound awkward? What will they think of me? Meanwhile, the more focused you become on connecting, understanding, observing, and engaging, the less mental space and security has to grow. And another idea Carnegie repeats through this entire book is this: act enthusiastic and you will be enthusiastic. And psychologically, that principle matters way more than people realize, okay? Because confidence is not usually something you wait to feel first. A lot of the time, confidence is something that builds up after action, meaning you speak first and you engage first and you participate first, and then your nervous system will slowly realize that, oh, wait a minute, we survive. And that's how social confidence actually develops, not through isolation or through endless overthinking and perfecting, but through doing. And I think this is also where I personally had to find balance, okay? Because, like I said earlier in the video, I genuinely do not care that deeply about being liked by everyone. I still innately enjoy keeping emotional distance from people. Like, that's genuinely who I am. And I still like my solitude and peace. But with the lessons I learned from this book and all these concepts, it's now intentional. It's not incompetence and fear based. It's not like I'm not withdrawing because I think I'm socially inept or socially incapable. I just understand that there's a difference between independence and social incompetence. And further educating myself on those social dynamics honestly gave me the ability to keep my independence without feeling small whenever I had to enter social spaces. Because at the end of the day, confidence in rooms is not really about becoming the loudest person, but it's about removing this subconscious idea that everybody else is somehow more socially valid than you are, because they're not. Most people are improvising socially just like you do, and trust me, they're trying just as hard as you do. And I think that's the real thing that Dale Carnegie was trying to teach throughout the book. Not how to become fake or how to manipulate people like in the 48 Laws of Power lore, and not how to become universally liked, but how to understand human nature well enough that social interaction stop feeling like psychological warfare every time you walk into a room, okay? And honestly, I think that's why the books stay relevant for so long. Because beneath the title, it's not just about making friends, it's about understanding people well enough that social interactions stop feeling confusing and intimidating and super overwhelming all the time. And for me, that was the biggest piece I got from it all, okay? Learning how to properly navigate social situations without misreading and overthinking and just constantly shrinking myself in the process. So, if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because trust me, I genuinely enjoy making this type of content for you guys. And also, if you haven't read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie yet, therefore check out the link in the description, because I put it there just for you guys. Until next time, see you in the next one. Bye.